I'll be the first to admit that all of this could have just been in my head. The mind is a freaky thing and can play some pretty trippy tricks on you. Whenever I was scared as a kid, my dad always told me that in life, you shouldn't be afraid of ghosts. Fear the living because they can actually hurt you. In my late teenage years, I came into some money after my father committed suicide and left me an inheritance. At the time of my dad's passing, he and my mom owned a cabin in Oregon near Mount Bachelor. Since my mom could no longer afford the payments and renting it out wasn't covering the costs, the cabin was put up for sale. It was set to go on the market in less than a month, and all the paperwork was being finalized with the realtor and lawyer. For that month, the cabin was vacant, no renters, no visitors. I saw this as a chance to get away and clear my head after everything that had happened. I quit my job, packed up my snowboarding gear, grabbed my dog, and took my dad's car, which he had willed to me, up to the cabin. This was our family cabin, which my parents rented out when we weren't using it. I had the keys and the alarm code, so I didn't feel the need to stop by the rental management company to inform them of my stay. That doesn't really matter for the story, but I figured I'd mention it anyway. The first 2 days at the cabin were normal, nothing unusual at all. I spent my days playing with my dog in the snow, snowboarding, and my evenings drinking, listening to music, and smoking out on the balcony. I had already stocked up on food, cigarettes, and liquor, so I was pretty much a shut-in, aside from the occasional trip to the slopes. With my dog for company and DVDs and PlayStation for entertainment, I was content. I finally started to relax after all the drama that had led me there. The cabin itself was 2 stories. The bottom floor had the living room, a side guest bedroom, and a small kitchen. The upstairs had 2 more bedrooms, including the master bedroom, which had a walkout balcony. I spent almost all my time in the living room, kitchen, or master bedroom. I never went into the other rooms. I always kept those doors shut. Open doors to dark rooms have always creeped me out. On the 3rd day, I was going through my usual routine, playing with my dog, watching DVDs, and gaming. The snowfall was heavy that day, so I decided to stay in rather than drive down the hill to the main road. That's when things started getting weird. There were only 2 other cabins near ours, maybe a block away from each other. All other cabins were about a mile away. Surrounding us was mostly forest and very tall pine trees. This will be important later. Both of the nearby cabins were empty. I knew no one was staying there because I had seen no signs of activity over the past couple of days. Around midday, while I was outside with my dog, I noticed footprints in the snow around our cabin. It was still snowing, so the prints looked fresh, like someone had been there in the last 20 to 30 minutes. I thought maybe someone was staying in one of the nearby cabins, and I just hadn't noticed. Maybe they were shut-ins like me. The prints led away from my cabin and disappeared into the denser part of the trees. I brushed it off and went back inside. That night I got into bed, and my dog Midnight was lying beside me when his ears suddenly perked up. A second later he jumped off the bed and ran downstairs to the living room. I stayed silent, listening. I could hear him moving back and forth downstairs, pacing. After about 5 minutes he ran back upstairs to me and started doing his little dance, his sign that he needed to go outside. Shit, fine, I couldn't say no to him. We went downstairs and out to the driveway, but as soon as we got outside, he didn't want to pee. Instead, he started pulling on his leash, trying to drag me toward the trees, the same spot where the footprints had been earlier. He also kept sniffing the side of the house and looking up toward the roof. I wasn't about to go wandering into the woods at night, so I pulled him back inside and we went upstairs. About half an hour later, I was lying in bed when I heard something. It sounded like hooves walking across the roof. There were about 6 steps, spaced apart like a man's stride. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a pine cone had fallen from a tree. Maybe a forest animal was up there. Midnight heard it too. He ran to the balcony screen door and stood there, waiting for me to let him out. All right, you know what? I considered myself a tough guy at the time, fairly well built, strong enough to handle myself. So, I grabbed my coat, shoes, cigarettes, and flashlight and stepped out onto the balcony. Fuck it, right? I lit a cigarette and scanned the roof with my flashlight. Nothing. The snow on the roof was undisturbed. Weird. Had I imagined it? Maybe. But then, why did Midnight react too? Maybe he was just feeding off my paranoia. I started to relax. I leaned against the railing, staring at the stars, letting my eyes adjust to the darkness. And that's when I saw it. In a tree, taller than our cabin, about 20 feet from the balcony, I saw what looked like a man crouching between 2 branches. He was squatted on one branch, arms extended above his head, holding on to the branch above. Fuck me. What the fuck is that? I wasn't sure if I was really seeing this thing. I stood there, frozen. Midnight stood up behind me, pacing, lightly barking. The thing still didn't move. I debated whether to shine my flashlight on it, but something in my gut told me not to. Instead, I walked backward into the room, pulling Midnight with me. Once inside, I locked the door and finally aimed my flashlight at the tree. Nothing. I shut the curtains, got back into bed, and tried to sleep. Later that night, I heard it. A light tapping at the screen door, like fingers tapping on the glass. It was rhythmic, consistent, and it didn't stop. It went on for nearly an hour. Midnight just stared at the door, but wouldn't go near it anymore. The strangest part? I had this overwhelming feeling, like someone was inviting me to open the door. But in the back of my mind, I kept hearing my dad's voice, telling me to stay in bed. So I listened. Eventually, I passed out. When I woke up, everything was normal. The rest of the week, nothing else happened. No footprints, no noises, and no tapping, thankfully. I totally admit, it could have all been in my head. A lot was going on at the time, and I was pretty messed up from all the drama. But still, I don't think I'll ever forget that night.